This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
Folks, the very popular blog and Substack, fearless media commentary, definitely fearless. As I've said before, I don't think either one of us, and because of my association with him and my agreement with him, I don't think either one of us will ever get jobs in mainstream media again. But things may change, who knows? Because everything he's saying is right. You can't help but agree. The scrutiny and the criticism that he's providing to us all through Pressrun.media. Eric Boehlert joins us once again on Make It Plain, a regular. We're happy to have him. Hey, buddy, how are you today, man?
Good. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. Let me start this way. Did you coin the term for Arizona frauded? Is that yours?
No.
Okay.
That's a good one, though, right?
It is great.
I think in my piece, I think I linked to the original, whoever came up with
okay,
it.
all right. But now you got a hot piece currently, and I'm glad you've written it, because again, it's showing the double standard, the sexism that exists in politics and media coverage. The media, the mainstream, even CNN, everyone else has gone berserk over Kamala Harris's visit outside the country.
Yeah. Well, this was her first big event, right? So the coverage for a few months had been, well, she's just kind of in Joe Biden's shadow. What is she doing? What's her job? We don't really know. Kind of what I had picked up as kind of very condescending coverage. No vice president has ever come in 3 or 4 months and served as president, which is, I think, what some people thought Kamala Harris was going to do or something. So I think the knives were kind of already out. And so this was her first foreign trip down to Guatemala and Mexico. And so the press really pounced. And yeah, so the piece I did was called "The Gotcha Press Comes for Kamala Harris." And a lot of it was set off by this 30-second back and forth with Lester Holt, who at NBC interview this week, who repeatedly demanded to know why, she hadn't been to the border yet. And this is just as a straight GOP talking point. They've been hammering this on Fox News for months. The background is she was tasked by Joe Biden to oversee the administration's effort to stem the flow of immigration from Central America and Mexico, try to boost those countries' economies, so people wouldn't want to leave, explain to them this is not a good time to come to the United States, et cetera, et cetera. And immediately the GOP and Fox News and then the mainstream press decided she was the border czar. Well, if you're the border czar, then your job is to stop people from coming to the border. So that's kind of the nuanced background. They gave her a title she was never given. And therefore, why haven't you been to the border? Why haven't you been to the border? Why haven't you done photo ops? So that was the background for the Lester Holt, kept pressing her. And people didn't like her response. And I tweeted, the irony, one of the criticisms was she smiled too much during her answer. And I said, somebody tell Hillary Clinton, because she got crucified for, 8 years during campaigns because she didn't smile enough. So in terms of the sexism, I think you're right. You can't win for losing. If you don't smile, they hit you. If you do smile during an answer or you laugh, it's flippant and she's not taking this seriously. But anyways, that was one question, a 30-second question, and CNN and others just announced that it overshadowed her entire trip. And CNN in particular really went after her and said, the trip had produced poor reviews. Well, it was CNN that had produced the poor reviews, and it was CNN that announced, her Lester Holt question had overshadowed the trip. And diplomatically, the trip itself was very productive. The president of Mexico said extraordinarily kind things about Kamala Harris and said he was deeply impressed. And just real quick, and there's no context. I mean, this is just classic gaffe coverage, right? This is classic, you tripped up for 30 seconds. We're going to, lay the hammer down. And where's the context for what happened during the previous 4 years? I mean, as I pointed out in my piece, the last time Trump's vice president was in the news, it was because he was in danger of being murdered in the halls of Congress by an insurrectionist mob. And now Biden's vice president got 3 days of bad coverage because she may have misanswered a question. I mean, those two things are not similar in any way. So I thought the press was, very unfair. And I noted in my piece, it seemed to be the Lester Holt and the trip seemed to be a piece of a larger picture of trying to trip her up recently with this kind of ridiculous gotcha coverage. Real quick, over the Memorial Day weekend, right? She got beat up because her Memorial Day tweet wasn't, it wasn't worded correctly, and that was somehow a news story.
No, you're right, and it's probably a preview of what's to come in her political career, because we all know that eventually vice presidents seek the presidency, as she had already done. We've talked before about how they can't really stick anything to Biden.
Right, exactly.
There's no scandal that can be manufactured. Even some of these latest text messages from Hunter Biden is on Hunter Biden. It's just things are not transferring to Joe Biden. And we've talked about this ad nauseum. It seems that the mainstream media has a need to create drama, as you've also said, to drive interest. So they've got to make up things that really aren't there and sensationalize things. And whether they realize it or not, they have to realize it by now, though. We're not children anymore. We're living in a new era that is sexist. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to remember what other vice president has ever gone on a foreign trip and faced that level of scrutiny. Right. I can't remember one. Can you?
No, I can't. And you're right. This desperate need for drama. Just a real quick side note. Yesterday, the Washington Post put up a piece saying Democrats were getting frustrated with Biden's, quote, relentless pursuit of an infrastructure deal. And I'm just like, yeah, he's trying to pass an infrastructure deal. Now he's getting dinged because he's relentless in his focus, and if he wasn't focused, they would hit him for not being focused. But look, they were spoiled for the Trump years, right? There was tumult and controversy, not only every day, every hour. There was constant White House backstabbing, gossip, all kinds of intrigue, people turning on each other. Zero. There hasn't been one sentence of that in 4 months, and there probably isn't going to be for 4 years. And so, as you point out, the press is really scrambling to try to figure out, how to create news. And the easiest way to do that is just parrot whatever Republicans are saying. And your point about Kamala Harris is absolutely right. As the press and Republicans and Biden's primary opponents have discovered last year, this doesn't stick. The stuff that they tried against Hillary doesn't stick against him. The stuff they tried against Obama doesn't stick against him. And that's the privilege of being a middle-aged or even an elderly white man running, and being in politics in America. This stuff doesn't stick. And so they look around and they say, oh, I bet you it'll stick. I know who it'll stick to.
Yeah, right. We know we make a stick to. She's a woman. She's a woman of color. I mean, common checks, about 7, 8 boxes?
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
So, Black, Asian, Caribbean. I mean, they can just we can get them all in one big shot,
Right. And frankly, doesn't have the experience on the national stage. So it's going to be a little trickier for her. Has a new staff, first foreign trip. But yeah, so I think they were kind of laying in wait for her. And again, the idea that one question that was, from Lester Holt, that's basically just a Republican talking point. And that's the other thing, the CNN coverage and the other coverage of her trip. It was just this immediate embrace of, Republican hecklers. And the coverage was just filled with quotes from Republicans saying how they didn't like the trip. Therefore, the trip wasn't a success. Since when does the opposition party get to determine whether foreign policy trips are successes or victories? Kamala Harris had at least a 30-minute press conference during the trip, spoke, extemporaneously in great detail about the topics and issues that are driving the immigration and, in Central America and things like all of that was just completely ignored. And the idea was, everything else was overshadowed. And look, I mean, again, they're singing off the Republican chorus.
And unfortunately, no interest in a story about a woman of color being the first vice president in history, going on her first foreign trip and being well-informed,
Right.
and well-spoken and intelligent. I mean, they just cannot do a story that changes the way they normally stereotype people, and particularly women. This is a very intelligent woman who has her information, who has a grasp of the issue. Can't do that. Just will not let it happen. More MIP after this message. You and I have talked about this before too. Well, I mean, speaking of Joe Biden, I mean, you're right. He's Wonder Bread. Nobody dislikes Wonder Bread. It's just Wonder Bread, and it is what it is. But it may be a sort of a blessing in disguise for the Harris team, because now they don't have to wait to wonder what's going to happen as she plans her future. They can say, okay, they've shown their cards. This is what they're going to do. And remember, here's the thing that's interesting, Eric. The mainstream media practically helped create her nomination, because remember, they said they went to Chris Dodd, again, looking for drama. I think it started with Politico, and we've talked about how Politico likes to do this. They're really good at manufacturing crap.
Yeah.
Chris Dodd said that if she can't be the pick because she's too ambitious.
Oh, right.
Remember? And it backfired, because thousands of women then mobilized because of the inherent sexism in that statement. You're gonna not pick a woman and punish her because she's too ambitious. All right. And so she becomes the vice president. There was a lot of reason to believe that Susan Rice was on her way to be the vice president.
Oh, right.
Which probably would have been a mistake, but be that as it may, it ends up being Kamala. And the mainstream media is so self-unaware, it doesn't realize that in the past, these things have actually helped to elevate her. Maybe this will, I don't know, but it just seems to me an over scrutinization, looking for something. There was even the thing that it was a tweet about Memorial Day.
Yeah.
Who does not wish people a happy Memorial? Everybody wishes everybody a happy Memorial Day.
Right. Enjoy the long weekend. Yeah.
Right. Enjoy the long weekend.
And that was driven entirely by Nikki Haley and Fox News. They jumped on it automatically. And then, you saw, prominent journalists on Twitter saying, oh, this was a miscue. Oh, this was a misstep. Oh, her team really let her down with this tweet. Just completely manufactured stuff. And in terms of over scrutinizing, another thing I mentioned in my piece was not only is she overseeing the effort in terms of stemming the flow of immigration, diplomatically dealing with Central America, she's also been asked to oversee, the Democratic or be a liaison with the Democratic response to all these voter suppression laws. And so instead of traditionally looking at that, the press looking at that and saying, wow, Biden really sees her as a partner. She's taking on these very weighty topics. There's constant coverage of, oh, she's being set up to fail. Oh, Biden's trying to undermine her. Oh, preemptively dinging her for possible failures. Oh, she can never fix both these problems. So it's crazy. I mean, it just completely defies logic, and always looking for, the downside, always looking for the negative, and penalizing her for being a very substantive vice president.
Yeah. No, you're right. And then there was the other thing about her shaking somebody's hand, and then she wiped her hand off allegedly.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, that was another thing. But see, here's the thing about Memorial Day. To be frank with you, and I'm sure you agree with me, the mainstream media's coverage of Memorial Day is always wrong anyway, especially on Fox, but even the other so-called non-Fox stations, CNN. Eric, Memorial Day, we have two holidays for the military.
Right.
Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Actually, Memorial Day is for those who have fallen.
Right.
Veterans Day is for those who have served and I guess are serving.
Right.
And they always get that wrong. Memorial Day becomes about something else. And it becomes more about politically soldiers who are in service right now.
Right.
More so than honoring those who gave their lives. Because if it was really about that, people would talk more about the Civil War and what those soldiers really died for, what they were in a war to stop. Right. So even in criticizing her on Memorial Day, I found that embedded in their criticism was still a lack of acknowledgement of what the person Memorial Day and its origins, because it was founded by freed people, former enslaved people in South Carolina, because the graves of Union soldiers had been desecrated up to that point, just thrown in some mass grave. That's where it started. And you know, there was an individual in the military who had his mic cut.
Oh yeah.
Remember, because he started talking about that. So why didn't that blow up on CNN?
Yeah.
Why is what she said, have a great weekend? Right. God forbid she would have. Can you imagine if Kamala Harris had said what I'm just saying to you? You know, Memorial Day was started by former enslaved people. Oh, they would have called for an impeachment hearing. But all she said was have a good weekend. That's the only thing a black woman can say who's vice president. This dude starts giving the history, and he wasn't even black. White dude. Right.
He was a white retired officer. In
uniform.
Right.
But that should have been the story.
Right. The organizer said, you know, he wasn't supposed to be talking about race during this Memorial Day comment, you know, remarks and things like that. And the Memorial Day thing was such a joke. I mean, because Kamala Harris officially in her capacity had other pronouncements and statements to say about those who had given their lives. I mean, it's almost a parody, the idea that a public servant tweeting, have a enjoy the long weekend. And of course, the context of that was the Biden administration has successfully, you know, loosened the grip of this deadly pandemic, you know, something Trump couldn't and refused to do. You know, the idea was, well, maybe we could get together at 4th of July because vaccinations are going so well. Well, it turns out people got together over Memorial Day. So that was the background. That was the context for her enjoy the long weekend. And just real quick, the point I was saying before about, you know, the press dinging her for overseeing these big initiatives and she can't possibly fail. Well, what about her role, you know, in this extraordinary successful vaccination rollout? She's been a key player in that. She's made all kinds of public statements, public appearances, and that just gets complete. Her role in that wildly successful initiative just gets completely ignored or buried. And again, you know, the press likes to focus on, oh, you know, she's going to fail with the border, and oh, she's going to fail with the, you know, the voter suppression stuff. So yeah, everything you've mentioned, you know, they've got her. The press has the sights for her because, you know, she'll most likely run for president again. And they think the attacks on her will stick better than they do with Biden.
Yeah. More MIP after this message. So Pressrun.media as a blog is doing better and obviously lasting longer than Trump's blog. Tell us, give the audience advice. How are you so much more successful than even the former president?
Be a better writer. You know, it's interesting. You know, it's so strange. I mean, he has complete dominance over the Republican Party. I mean, all the leaders operate in fear of him. They're filibustering everything. They wouldn't agree to this commission, this January 6th commission that a month ago the Republican Party was totally fine with. Trump makes 2 calls and suddenly, so his power is only increased in the Republican Party. At the same time, he's just completely fading away as a public person. He has no online presence. Kicked off YouTube, kicked off, Facebook, kicked off Twitter. Facebook has banned him till at least 2023. And people have low expectations of Facebook. Oh, they're going to let him back on just when he wants to run for re-election again. But they're not going to let him back on if he spends the next 2 years talking about a stolen election. I mean, that's why they kicked him off. He's not going to change his behavior. It's going to be impossible, I think, for Facebook to allow him back on. But my point is, he has no online presence. Yes, he can probably win the Republican nomination. How do you run a general election campaign if you have no online presence? And so his response was, I'm going to launch my own thing and I'm going to write a blog. Well, as you noted, he took it down a week ago because people were laughing at how bad the traffic was. When he got kicked off Twitter, he had 88 million followers. His blog, according to the Washington Post, was getting traffic, somewhere in the 200,000 range. And it was an awful site that you couldn't keep, there was no interaction. It was like straight out of 2009. And so apparently the reason he stopped, he had the blog taken down was because people were laughing at how few people were reading it. And Trump, defined success by ratings and things like that. So it's really this incredible dichotomy. I mean, he dominates, he rules the Republican Party, and he's invisible. You know, he's in hibernation down in Mar-a-Lago. He made an appearance in North Carolina over the weekend. You know, it was not covered by the mainstream news on live TV, certainly. Even just Twitter, I don't think he can ever be reelected without Twitter. And you throw in all the others, I just don't understand how he's going to have a political future. Maybe I'm being naive, but his rise was built on his ability to go viral, and he had none of that, and he's never going to be back on these platforms, I don't think. And he's too lazy to build his own platform. People were talking about last winter, oh, you know, he's gonna create his own Facebook. He is so lazy. That is such a Herculean task. He doesn't have any interest or effort in building it. He hasn't built anything his entire life. He was given this real estate job that he drove into bankruptcy. The idea that he was going to become a new tech mogul, I always thought was a joke. And so here he is. You know, he's playing golf, he's puttering around, and it's great to see. And I don't miss him at all.
Well, and remember, at one time the conversation was he was going to have his own network. In fact,
Sure.
They said that was what he would have done had he lost to Hillary Clinton.
Right.
But and he probably could have at that time with the momentum he had.
Right.
And the lack of knowledge. See, here's the other thing. Not only is he lazy, people, even his supporters, even those who say they support him, also know he doesn't pay.
Yeah.
You know, so
Good point.
it ain't just lazy, Eric. He can't go to the same folk, even some of them folk on TV saying, oh, I love him. When he calls them and said, hey, give me some money to start this blog. Oh, wait a minute, let me call you back. Said, no, we'll give you the mouth service, but we're not going any more pockets for you, dude, because you don't reciprocate, you don't his was interesting. If he had not won, there were people that would have put money up for that network, realizing what they were getting themselves into. Can't do any of that now. Can't build his own platform because he does not pay. Nobody is going to take a job with him because even if you get some change working for him, he's going to do something controversial that's going to make you lose your job. And then can you go work anywhere else? I'm telling you, do we have a list of people who work for him who are now gainfully employed in other places and making it? Yeah. Is Sean Spicer doing well?
Yeah, right. And this goes all the way back to those, Atlantic City cabinet makers who built his casinos, who got paid 30 cents on the dollar if they got paid at all.
Is Sean Spicer doing well? What's the other one's name? Huckabee. What's her name?
Sarah Huckabee.
What is she doing now? Trying to figure it out.
Right.
It
hasn't been great for anyone's resume. Look, he can always raise a ton of money. He's a world-class grifter. But as you say, when he turns around and has all this money and says, okay, guys, build me a platform, build me. And you're right. They're going to say, we know how this story goes. And obviously nobody in Silicon Valley would work with him and things like that.
Even no good Steve Bannon.
Yeah,
that's his boy. But Steve's building his own thing. He ain't waiting for him. Right. Because everybody knows, he's like the ideological symbol puppet. I mean, he is Ronald Reagan. Right. A buffoon that they use to promote their agenda, however they can get it promoted. But when we get serious, hey, let's give him some money. Let's make an investment. Let's invest in one of these businesses. He said, no, we'll pass on that. We just need to get judges. We just need to get people on the bench. And they did that. So, and as we talked about before, they did that so well, they may not need the White House and Congress for a few years because they've got the bench locked up, unfortunately. Folks, check out Pressrun.media, a lot of great pieces, and they really make you think differently. There is nothing, and this is material what Eric has done for us over the years. Folks, there is nothing more liberating than being able to watch television news and all news coverage, take it in with a discerning third eye. There is nothing more powerful than that. So you're not just being manipulated. You can look at things and read between the lines. That is one of the most important gifts any human being could have. And Eric helps us, stretch those muscles. and get that mental exercise. So it's really, brain calisthenics, y'all. And it's not hard. You don't have to, it's not like, doing the Peloton y'all do and then fall out. You could do this while you're on the Peloton. And you might even forget you're on the Peloton because your brain is working at the same time too. And I'm not just saying that because he's a friend. I'm not just blowing him up, blowing smoke. For real. I mean, they just don't take my word for it. Just try it. And you'll be like, wow, I know more. I'm smarter than I was before I read Eric Boehlert. Trust me on that. Trust me.
Or you can now listen to it as well.
That's right, because he records it and you can listen to it. So that's even easier while you're moving around and running. So that's great. And we're always very, very fortunate to have him here. And as you can see, he gets me going. It's like, pouring gasoline on fire when we hook up. So
that's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Eric Boehlert, folks, Pressrun.media. Please subscribe. And a lot of major media people are doing that as well because they know what he has to offer and what he has to say. Eric, thank you as always, buddy.
All right. Appreciate it. Have a great week.
You too. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.